EverQuest next starts with Landmark. I'm joined by Dave here. Dave, thanks very much for talking to us today. How's things?
The things are fantastic. Closed beta, alpha, it's all been just great.
We're here to talk about Landmark. Now, just for those people who are not au fait with it, what is Landmark?
Landmark is this huge vehicle that we created that allows people to basically build whatever they want to in a set of persistent worlds where you basically journey through countless other people's imaginations to find out what they're building and changing and developing all on their own. It started out as kind of a pipe dream as we were building EverQuest Next. EverQuest Next was pushing frontiers on many levels for changing what an MMO is. But fundamentally what we wanted to create a dynamic MMO in which nothing it was ever the same thing, the same way twice. That people were always experiencing something new and developing individual stories. But to be able to do that, we had to create all these really fundamentally different tools to be able to execute on that. And we figured, well, why not, as long as we're developing all these really cool tools, why don't we make them intuitive enough and friendly enough that we could give them to players and see what they do with them. And that just kept snowballing and snowballing until eventually we came up with Landmark. Now Landmark has become its own full MMO. It has all the combat and risk and social elements and everything that you would expect from an MMO. But what we've done is essentially created these permanent worlds where people can use all the tools that we're building. Our motto inside is whatever we can do, they can do. And that's the way we're pursuing everything. And so far, so good.
Saying there during the presentation, you're so surprised by what people are creating already. I mean, like you say, like EverQuest is basically the fantasy MMO. This is like your Elseworlds. This is your multiverse where people are creating whatever. In the space of time, I mean, give us a couple of examples. What have you seen people creating?
Well, I've seen a full-on space battle-ish looking thing, like spaceships and stuff, firing blasters and stuff at each other. We've seen the Statue of Liberty, the Eiffel Tower, the Chrysler Building, things that people would see in the normal world, and then they rebuild them and they look fantastic. But then also a lot of fantasy stuff. We've seen sculptures, giant sculptures that people have made of statues of people and different recognizable things like Fiona V from the EverQuest franchise. And I mean, just basically anything you can imagine, you can see. Some of the stuff that I really appreciate is the stuff that makes modern architecture within the game. And the reason why I really think that's cool, like fantasy architecture is awesome, but like a floating castle looks like a floating castle, whatever it is in your head, because there is no floating castles. But when somebody can make modern art or modern architecture or a skyscraper or something like that, and it looks right, then the tools are really phenomenal, because we all know what those things are supposed to look like, and when they do look like that, it's great. So once we were able to do that sort of thing, once we're able to embrace tech and sci-fi and all those other things, well, the sky's the limit for what the players can create, and they're creating everything.
Okay, you're talking about content creation, building creation, but what happens if someone creates something in the game that is already copyrighted somewhere else?
Sure. Well, because we own the servers and everything like that, we just can't tolerate that. And so we have mechanisms in the game to allow players to report problems. We also have people that are watching for problems. And then we have a couple of other things which are kind of sociological in orientation. Because we have Player Studio, and because people can actually make money and gain fame by participating in Player Studio, the large majority of people are probably going to toe the line as far as rules go. They're not going to build Swastika Land. They're not going to build the Starship Enterprise, because they know that we can't allow that to happen inside the game. So they're not going to jeopardize their account because they want to be able to participate in those other elements of the game. But then there's trolls, and trolls just don't respect anything, and they want to destroy. So we have to take care of those things. And there's easy ways for people to be able to report what they see that they don't like, and then we have great mechanisms for under the hood, which allow us to immediately see what's a real comment versus a cry wolf kind of comment, and those mechanisms prioritize our customer service queue, and they can quickly turn something invisible while we debate whether it should be in the game. Just really good mechanisms like that to take care of it. We don't really expect there to be a huge problem in this respect, because these are problems we've been dealing with chat and house decorating and things like that in other games already. So it's just a bigger version of the same issues.
And this is just with simple tools. Like you said during the presentation, it's like 7 simple tools and what people have managed to create specific. Can you sort of talk us through what those tools are and how even the players have surprised you guys by what they can actually do with it?
Well, we have the 7 basic tools. There's add, delete, and heal. Add and delete are obvious. You're just basically putting blocks down. And then there's a heal, which allows you to restore the area back to the way the server thought it was originally. So you can just repair damage really easily. But in addition to that, we also have the smoothing tool, which allows you to take something that's made out of blocks and then actually be able to smooth the edges or make it spherical so that you can really make things not look like cubes at all. You don't even know. And then there's painting, which allows you to very easily use a paintbrush to go back and forth on stuff and paint it different colors so you can make something out of one material and transform it later without having to rebuild it from scratch. And then the line tool, because the world is... Well, the world's not, the real world that we're all used to is not composed of 45 and 90 degree angles. So we need something that can do any angle at all, an arbitrary angle, and that's what the line tool's for. You can even change the endpoints to be able to make angled slopes up and buttresses and all those sorts of things. So those were the basic tools, and then they're all wrapped together with something that's called the selection tool, which allows you to grab a 3D area and then be able to use the other brushes on it to affect it, like add, delete, smooth, all those different things will affect that area. But more importantly, you can copy and paste. And when you can copy something, you can paste it and save it as a template. And then the template is what you use if you want to participate in Player Studio, which is our mechanism by which people can make stuff inside the game, put it up on the marketplace, and then other players can buy that stuff, and we share the revenue between SOE and the players. And so you can actually make a lot of money in this game if you want to. But we're really all about fame and fortune and stuff. And those tools are fantastic for being able to do all that. But then the players just went nuts during alpha. And they started making stuff with those tools. Well, the thing I'd like to talk about is when I showed a couple of screenshots to the lead programmer one day, he looked at the screen and he paused a really long time. And then he looked at me and he goes, dude, I have no idea how they're doing that. I mean, just have no idea. Because what they were doing was taking a voxel and shrinking it down to something they called a microvoxel and then pasting that in different ways. And it created, there were logical behaviors that we have in the game for connecting one voxel to another voxel. It's like if you smooth a voxel, those verts need to be able to weld to the ones that are next to it. And so the players took that logic and that connectivity and they just went crazy with it. So they created microvoxels and super microvoxels and negative voxels and zero voxels and inlay techniques and just all these things we literally had no idea you could do inside the game. And they've taken the visual fidelity of our game and just like it's just an order of magnitude cooler than it was. And yeah, that's been awesome.
You were saying about how you're actually having to set up like schools, like training exercise for staff to show them how players did it. Is there any sort of thought about just you guys just take a step back, go take vacation for a couple of weeks and come back, let the players do everything and then learn from that?
Well, we're doing that. We're just doing it on a daily basis. I joke around with the guys internally all the time, but it's not really a joke. Well, I work all day with the team, then I go home and I play at night. And when I'm playing it at night, what I'm really doing is I'm watching player-made tutorials to learn what kinds of crazy tricks they figured out that day. And then I go back to the team the next day and I say, dudes, did this break anything? And then we go in and we check it out and we optimize and we talk about how we can make it more intuitive. But yeah, seriously, it's getting to the point where the players can do so much phenomenal stuff that we're going to have to start training our people internally on how to play the game like the players do. Because, well, the end results, as you see with the screenshots and stuff that we've shown, are just incredible. And so it's been a fun experience. We've really enjoyed it, and we can't wait till we're doing like AI tools and scenario tools and all these other mechanisms that we're creating for EverQuest Next. We give them all to the players, and then if they go crazy like they did with the building tools, and you know they will, we're going to have a phenomenal game.
Well, as I said, you've said that basically Walker Caves AI are going to be rolled into Landmark at some point in the foreseeable future. At the moment, it's really the building, the construction. Now, you sort of touched upon Minecraft slightly during the presentation about you guys have sort of looked at that and what they did. And what I thought was interesting as well, it was sort of said from the back of the room about where you guys aren't making Photoshop, the MMO. You're not making Photoshop, the game. Just sort of, how do you approach this to make sure it doesn't become that? It's less art project, more game still.
Well, the key is don't go nuts with the tools. Don't come up with a whole bunch of radio buttons with options and all these other things. What we really need to do as game designers, what we really need to do is identify all this power that we want to be able to do, and then create a small set of tools, like the 7 tools that we have right now, which are just so incredibly flexible that the longer you play the game, the more tricks you discover. And that's it turns out that that's what we did. So we had these basic tools, and then the players figured out ways to do cooler and cooler and cooler things with them. There's a few of the tricks that they've created that we need to figure out ways to make them more intuitive to the casual player, but we kind of just want it so that the longer you play, the more you can do with those tools. If we can keep it down to a basic set of tools where you just extrapolate your own learning, your own thinking, you keep having these moments of discovery, like, oh my God, I didn't know I could do that. Look at what I just did. And that's useful in this way. And then you start playing with it, and that's where you, the individual playing the game, feel successful. And it's those moments of success that make a fun game. Like, you always want to be able, every game that's ever been created is about the bragging rights. And those moments where you discover something that's really unusual and cool, you get to turn to your buddy and go, look what I did. And that's a win, and a win is everybody wants that.
And you said there that even if you don't enjoy creating, or you can't create, you feel that's not really your thing, you can go and explore, you can see other people's work. So it's as much about just the exploration of an adventure sort of that game as well as the creation.
Absolutely. I mean, right now we very much satisfy explorers, crafters, and creators. Those groups of people are well catered for right now. But as we add in risk and combat and more of the depth and stuff to the worlds, we start to embrace more and more kinds of players. It won't be long till we have PvP. And it's just not normal PvP. It's like, well, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but you can imagine our sandbox toolkit approach to the world also applied to PvP in a fully destructible world. Go ahead and let your imagination just go. So, I mean, as we go farther and farther along, we start taking care of more and more kinds of players, and ultimately that's why an MMO is actually hard to create. You can't make a game for just one type of player. You know, like when you're making a first-person shooter, you really only have to cater to first-person shooter guys. You don't have to worry about crafters and creators and decorators and explorers and all those other things. But an MMO needs to cater to everybody. And so there has to be many, many different ways for you to win and succeed. And we've started with those major 3, but then we're going to all the other ones too.
Listen, thank you very much indeed for talking to us.
Yeah, you bet. Glad to be here. Thanks.